Now, ladies and gentlemen, you're in for an absolute treat. Stefan Eger is here. He's a senior learning designer from Learning Pool. And it's not often that we get to go under the hood and actually see how a learning designer works with a learning experience platform. Today, you're going to experience it. So I'm handing you over to Stefan. Have fun. Fun.
Hello, everyone. I'm Stefan, and I'm delighted to get to do this showcase for you. Thanks to everyone at TLC for giving me this slot. As Kath already said, I'm a senior LD for Learning Pool. I've been working in L&D for about 10 years. Started as a face-to-face trainer, and then someone bought a copy of Storyline, and we just sort of started teaching ourselves, and that was now 10 or 11 years ago even. I'm going to spend the next 30 minutes or so talking to you about our learning experience platform Stream and one solution the team and I put together for it recently. And then at the end, I really hope that you guys have got some questions for me. So, sorry, I'm just trying to get the slide to move on. There we go. I'm excited to do this showcase because as a learning designer, there's a lot that I've been screaming about for many, many years that learning experience platforms or LXPs such as Stream helps me achieve. Now, before I go any further, I want to do a quick poll, please.
Okay, so have you designed a learning solution for learning experience platforms? Oh, they're still coming in.
Great.
All right. So it looks like the majority haven't yet done that, Stefan.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. It sounds like the majority of you guys haven't yet designed learning solutions for LXPs, which is great because I hope you'll be able to take something away. But however you voted, I hope you like what I'm about to show you, and I hope that you'll find it interesting. So without further ado, let's spill the tea on the LXP. Although we're actually looking at cups of coffee here, I'm just noticing. So yeah, learning experience platforms are like so hot right now, aren't they? I wanted to look at the learning experience platform versus the more traditional LMS that maybe we're all used to. So I think everyone's probably heard of LXPs by now. They're a sort of mot du jour in the L&D world. These things happen. But where did they suddenly spring from? Now, let's look back. I was used to doing solutions on LMSs, as I'm sure most of you are, and I found them restrictive. I found them a little bit unwieldy. They needed a lot of custom work to give a good learner experience. LMSs tend to be very traditional, and even the less traditional ones are still quite traditional. Some of them are not very pretty, and some of them are really quite tricky to admin. But how good are they, honestly? Let's have a look. Now, what's really so different about them? I think LMSs we can think of as solid units, while Stream, our learning experience platform, is a lot more modular. So you don't have to show the learners what you don't need, what they don't need to see. They are more learner-centered, and they're also exploration-centered. Learners seek out the content they want. They're not just spoon-fed certain things that us instructional designers and the wider L&D community think they should be looking at. They have a better user experience. LMSs may look nice on the sort of couple of front pages, but they tend to be, in my experience, that when you get into them, they tend to be very text-driven and a little bit ugly. And the other thing that's great about LXPs is that you can get a much better, much richer data experience because they use XAPI. Now, what does this mean for us LDs? What is so different about designing for an LXP? The journey is learner-driven. They need to feel in control. And there is lots of data to back this up with. They want to feel in control. Just look at that modern learner graphic from Deloitte that's doing the rounds. They want to feel able to be in control. So you need to give them the ability. And that's why we can create an exploratory experience. Any learning journey needs to be easy to follow. And the solution also needs to be easy to find when searched for. Remember, we're talking about a learner-driven experience. So if they search for something, they need to be able to find it easily. Consider the search terms that people will use when you are writing your solutions. And the other thing is that all parts of the solution need to be accessible from any other part within. Don't fence them off. Don't compartmentalize. So before we go any further, let me throw out some recommendations. Number one, keep it simple. Stay away from the nesting doll approach. Lay it all open. Make everything accessible. I'll show you how we did that in just a second. Use the same icons for the same activity types throughout. That is so important. It gives the learners the breadcrumbs they need to find what they need to find and to navigate through the solution, even if it's their first experience with an LXP. To help with that, also do a lot of signposting. And then when you've done that, do another load of signposting as well, especially if your learners are inexperienced. Signposting won't put anyone off if it's there, but it will be missed if it's not. Now, in order to get it right, you have to talk to people. You have to have the conversation with the sponsors. You need to get in there, convince the people to go for the new, less hierarchical stuff, and reassure them that it's the right thing to do. Oh, sorry, I've accidentally moved away. Moved a little bit forward. So here we go. Right. Now, let me look at the example that I've come prepared with. So this is the Amway project management training solution. It's a big virtual blend for a large audience dispersed across the globe. They've got people in Russia, in Korea, in the United States, in Europe, all over the place. And they wanted a big content solution with animation, e-learning, curated resources, facilitated workshops. They were going to be face-to-face workshops, but we turned them into virtual instructor-led training because of COVID-19. And there's also a spaced practice campaign after the event. Now, this is the need. They came to us with wanting training for project managers. Project management training for people who aren't project managers. They're account managers who manage projects as part of their job, but they're not actually PMs. So they needed just the basics. They're already doing some of it. Some have been going for a while without training. There are pockets of knowledge throughout the cohort. They're very time poor. They're very, very busy people, and they've got little free time to spend on the training. They can't be bothered to read through reams of content. They just don't have the time. And there was no streamlined content, just pockets of stuff dotted around everywhere. So they need to learn the basics of project management so they understand the process. And then they need to easily access resources to find further information when they need it. They need the ability to practice after the main training event, which is why we came up with a notch campaign. Now let's look at the solution that we came up with. So here is how we interpreted their need. We really focused in on one thing. They only need the most useful bits of project management training. Usefulness was the sort of thing that we focused in on. So we concentrated on key performance moments where we could deliver the most value for the learners. Those are the essential steps in the project management process that we felt we could add the most value to. So We then brought them in, the learners and subject matter experts, to find out what would be most useful. We went to Michigan to run a workshop, interviewed the learners and SMEs. We based the content on real life scenarios, case studies that we gleaned from those workshops. And also, as you can see, in the process, we used up all the Post-it notes within a 10-mile radius. It was a sea of Post-it notes. This is just about a fifth of what you can see. So we came up with that it needs not to be one-off training. It needs to be online learning with resources, virtual instructor-led training using Zoom, and it shouldn't be too long. Remember, we've got really time-poor learners here, so we kept our e-learning to mini modules with a maximum length of 10 minutes and came up with 3 one-hour virtual instructor-led training sessions. We also came in with a load of just-in-time resources to further embed the learning and some job aids that would help them in the moment, such as templates to download, downloadable documents, checklists to guide them through the process, etc. That's what we wanted to do. Now, how did we get to slide 9 without even looking at the LXP? Wait no longer. Let's look at the outcome of all of this. So this is the front page, the landing page of the Amway Stream LXP instant. This is the first thing they see after the login screen. And we use a single sign-on, so there's no need to remember an extra password. It just works. If we start at the top, here you can see what do you want to learn search box. Remember, Stream focuses on learner-centered design. So even if this whole thing was completely empty, learners would be able to find what they want just by using the search. And Stream deep searches the content. So it shows results not just in the titles of the learning content, it also goes into the text of every e-learning, every PDF, everything. It deep searches that and brings out the information from within an actual learner experience. So it enables learners to look around and find what they need. That little A you can see in the top left-hand corner there, this is what Amway wanted to get back to the front page from wherever you are on the platform. So this could have been any other icon or a little piece of text, but it's the Amway A, that's what they wanted. Now, imagine I'm scrolling down. You've got 3 lines of content. You see the first 2 here. These lines can be enabled or not as you want them. At the top, you can see assigned learning, which is what people are enrolled in. So this is the more traditional approach. This is the learning that the L&D department have given for the learners to do. The next row is bookmarks, which is what people have saved because they want to learn it, in addition to what they've been assigned. You can change these titles to anything you like. It doesn't have to be assigned learning or my bookmarks. It could be my learning instead of my bookmarks, whatever you wish. And you can see I've assigned myself just the one, action planning and driving accountability, which is what we're going to talk about in a little bit. Now, imagine I'm scrolling down. This is line 2 and 3 now. You can see this is the playlists section. Now, these playlists are a collection of different learning experience. There are 3 currently on Amway's Stream instance. And I want to show you the project management solution, which they've snappily titled Action Planning and Driving Accountability. Let's have a look. So I'm clicking on it. Now imagine I've clicked on the playlist tile. This is the learner, the structure here on the right. You get the welcome, and then you get the web-based training, which is what they call e-learning. But on the left here, you've got an explanation how things work. It tells you what's in it and who it's for. The tree-like structure gives an indication of the flow, but it doesn't restrict. You can complete things in any order you wish, because that's how we chose to set it up. You could set it up so that you have to complete one thing before you move on to the next. It's totally customizable. So the first layer here, where you see introduction, animation, and resources, that's an explainer animation and the resources we want them to look at before the start. The second layer is the e-learning and the related resources. It gives learners a introduction to the content and familiarizes them with the case studies that they'll be working with. These different tiles here, you see prepare and align the leader, set up the project for success with the project scope document, and set up the project for success with a project implementation plan, are the different steps in the project process that we pulled out for the first section. You'll also see down here that each section has experience points associated with it. You can assign those as you want. In this case, learners get 10 points for the e-learning, 5 XP for commenting. We'll get to that in just a second. And 1 XP per resource that they work through. So let's look down to the next step. Imagine I've scrolled down the page. You're looking at layers 3 and 4. The third layer is for the virtual instructor-led training. They call them online learning sessions at Amway. And these are Zoom areas where Zoom integrates seamlessly with Stream LXP. So when there's a session happening, you click on it and it just takes you to the session. It's really, really quite nice. And there's also some pre-work resources that we want learners to do. And after the event, we will upload recordings of the previous sessions as videos so that learners can watch them when the live sessions aren't running. There is also a user-generated content section in each of those where learners can upload any exercises or homework that they want the facilitator to look at, and the facilitator can then give feedback. Now, the fourth layer is a pilot survey where we got some feedback from the learners, and we'll just look at that in a moment. Now, let me give you the main points from this solution. Keep it simple. Stay away from the Russian doll approach. This was an iterative process for us. We learned this as we went along and as we talked to the learners and the SMEs. So we laid it open. And the critical one is, as you can see here, you need to use the same icons for the same activity types throughout. This is really, really awesome. It's such a simple way to help people identify activity types. It's like breadcrumbs, basically. Do lots of signposting and then do some more. I've already said it and I'm going to say it again. Speaking of signposting, let me show you the next layer down if I click on one of these. So this is the first of the e-learning and resource tiles. When you click a content tile, you get access to the learning object. You've got instruction text on the left again. You'll see the instruction text is there if you need it, but it doesn't stop you from doing anything. You don't need to pay attention to it unless you're looking for an instruction. My advice as a learning designer, talking to learning designers, is make sure you write your instruction text really carefully and chat to people, get people's input. You need to get the description in there, what's in the area, what's in the level that you're at, how do you get around, and then for each object of learning, just have a line of what the piece of learning is about. Yeah, pieces of learning are called objects in this Stream LXP. Now let's look at one of them, and I'm going to click on the first one. So this is an e-learning module. It's an adapt module called Prepare and Align the Leader, the very first section in the Amway project management process. And at this point, you're only 3 clicks away from the very first page. So this is one of the 10-minute modules that I've talked about already. It pops up in the same window. To get back, you click on the little X here to close it. And you can see that I've enabled the social prompt on this object here. Learners can share their impressions of the content or exchange tips depending on the question that you write. I would say that's really important. So in this case, I wrote, in your experience, what works best to get buy-in from ABO leaders? What are your top tips? take care when you write your instructions. I would always encourage you to write open questions. Otherwise, you're just going to get yes, no. Try and engage people, draw people in and get them talking, and keep it relevant to the particular piece of learning that it's about. Now, that was one of the e-learning pieces. Let's look at another part of this solution. Now, this is about the learning after the main event. I'm talking about a space practice campaign that we created. We wrote the nudge campaign using Waves, our dynamic learning campaign builder. It works that you set the variables such as frequency, and quantity of interactions, and Waves responds to the input it gets. For example, let's talk about spaced practice like in this solution. If a learner gets a nudge question that's really easy, they're going to do really well, which is great. They're going to score high. So the next one can be a little bit more challenging. And that way you can increase their engagement. If they score low, if they don't do so well, Waves can respond with a simpler question that is more straightforward, and then increase the challenge bit by bit. It's dynamic, depending on performance, to create a more rewarding learner experience, and that'll help keep the content in people's minds and just stretch out that forgetting curve. We consider the learning design of the nudge campaign right from the outset, and I'd encourage everyone to do this as well, because it's so simple when you're writing those areas of content and the knowledge checks that are suited for the nudges, and it'll save you time, and consequently it'll save everyone a load of money as well, because you can do it so easily with Stream and Waves, considering what you're going to reuse as a nudge afterwards. I wanted to give you a second example of how to use Waves as well, because we all love compliance training so much, don't we? So you could use Waves to schedule reassessments of the learner's knowledge, to reschedule assessments of the learner's knowledge of compliance training. It would help meet any recertification requirements. So once a year, they get a reminder automatically without L&D input. So that's just one of the things that I've been screaming about as an LD, and I just love working with it. But now I've talked about one example of a learning experience. I just want to show you a couple more ways of creating different solutions to fulfill a different learner requirement. Let's look at some different approaches for different audience or different types of contents. Now, let's look at the playlist approach. This is the welcome to the platform for the Amway solution. So this will be the very first thing they do when they get onto Stream. So I'm going to click at this. And this is the playlist approach. It's more traditional because it's gated. You do one thing and then you move on to the next. The gates are there to direct you to complete one part and then move on to the next. It's very similar to its traditional learner journey on an LMS, 1, 2, 3. But this explains what you can do on an LMS to the learner. And now let's go completely in the other direction and look at the open learning experience, the OLX approach. This is an example that my colleague Matt Watts did a few months ago, called How to Rapidly Put Your Learning Online. And in this case, we released new content in stages. Each level builds on the previous, but you enroll yourself, learners search for it and enroll themselves, and they just take what they find useful. Everything is free to access. There's no prerequisites of completion. You just grab what you as the learner find useful. How are we going to find this right angle though? So that was 2 more examples, but there's so much flexibility with LXPs that you as a learning designer have a lot more options of presenting the content. And that brings with it a lot of responsibility, because you can really improve the learner experience if you get it right. So you need to engage with the audience wherever possible, or find out as much as possible about them if you can't actually speak to them directly. How do they learn? How do they access the content? Do learner interviews if you can. We did it for this one, and it was so important. Present the stakeholders, your sponsors, present them with different options, and try and convince them to go for the more learner-directed one. And as ever, it's a journey, and you learn with each solution. Every solution that you do will get a little bit better, and you will think of other ways of presenting the content that suits the learners more. All right, now let's look at something a little bit more techy. Now, let's talk about data. I love data, and I've always been disappointed how little data we get out of learning solutions that we provide for people. I've mentioned that Stream can give you a better insight into your learner's behavior, and here is how. It can show you everything your standard LMS would be able to, but so much more. You can get really granular reporting using XAPI. And it's got such a simple, easy to navigate interface. It's so nice. I'm not a techie person, and I'm not an expert, but this is so simple. Just every click gives you further depth. So let's look at user contribution quality here. So this little box here shows you each blue dot is a user. You've got the x-axis is the quantity of contribution they make, and the y-axis is the quality of contributions they make. So this would be if a learner is down here, if they are high in quantity but low in quality, this probably means that they're commenting a lot on your learning solutions, but they say, I like it a lot, or they copy and paste what other people say. They just keep it simple. Whereas people who have a high quality, they write a lot of different stuff, even though they might not do it in as many different learning solutions. So high quality but less quantity may indicate that they engage more deeply with the content. And if you, in the real world, if you hover over this, you would get a pop-up just like that dark gray box below with the person who it is. So each user has its own little assigned box. So down here where it says what level are my users, let's look at this. So each of these bars is one learning intervention. This one is called draft actions. So I took a screenshot over here when I hovered over this. It shows you by hover that 37 users have finished it, and 204 of them have started it. If you click into that, it will show you all the usernames and where they are within the piece of learning. Another great example about using data and gleaning data from this LXP would be the leaderboards. Now, custom leaderboards with Learning Locker, our learning record store, a data analytics tool that focus on exactly what you want to show. You can create them so easily. For Amway, we created one of those, and there were some special considerations because they're a global business, and they have operations in different cultural environments. And there was some cultural unease about leaderboards in certain areas of the world where they operate. So we could tell them on the leaderboard, you can anonymize yourself, or you can opt out completely. So you will, in the anonymous option, you will still see where you are, but nobody else will be able to tell who you are. Or you can just remove yourself completely. So it's just another example of that flexibility and that depth of granularity that you can go to with Stream. Now, I can, praise this until the cows come home, but let's have a quick look at how the learners felt about it. Now, they felt good about it, I'm pleased to say. We did a survey. And it was a relatively small sample, but we got excellent feedback. And the critical point we needed to hit was that people found it useful. And it seems that they did. If you look at the third circle the information I received in this training is useful. Everyone agreed. 14% of people strongly agreed, and 86% of people agreed. So I was really proud of all of those results. Right, that's it. I just want to pull together a little bit of a summary for you. Now, here is what I've learned so far from working with Stream LXP. When designing the structure, you've got to ask the right questions. You've got to ask lots of questions to really get under the skin of what's needed and how learners learn. Do learner interviews. Have a chat with those who will do the learning and with their managers. How do they learn? When do they learn? What's the status quo? Are they used to LMS structures, or are they well versed in LXPs already? You can adjust your solution design to that. Convince the sponsors and give them options. Show them the different ways of presenting and get their feedback. Number 4, keep it consistent. Please keep it consistent. Create a system and stick to the logic of it. Create a coherent learner journey throughout. Talk to your graphics team and ensure that there's a breadcrumb trail that makes the solution easy to navigate. Because nothing is more frustrating to the learners than if they don't know where they're going and if they get lost. And you can do it with a couple of simple tricks, such as icons or instruction text. And finally, my last point, which I can't make too strongly, keep it simple. Do what's right for them. Make it about them within the parameters that you can work. Don't be a glory seeker. Make it about them. Don't make it about yourself. Make it fit. Don't make it fancy for the sake of it. Right. That's me done. Now I'd be so happy if you asked me some questions.
Okay, we've got some questions from the audience.
Great.
The question from Charlene. She has asked, is each LXP a customized build for each brand?
You can do it that way, absolutely. It can be, absolutely, but you can also use different you can copy the build using the same designs, or you can copy it and then customize it afterwards. It's a sliding scale. You can make copies of the same. We also have a situation where you can have a parent LXP and then you can have child LXPs that sit underneath, where learners then have access to certain bits, but not others. I hope that answers your question.
Great, thank you. We've also got another question from Charlene. What would be the reasons for organizations choosing to use LMS instead of LXP?
LMS instead of LXP, I think it's about the organizational layout internally for them. It's about the requirements they have and the expectations they have on their learner platform and on their learners. I think that LXPs really answer to the age of learning in an online world. Often you hear that term, I didn't use it because it's so oft repeated, Netflix for learning, but it is that kind of approach. So it's very different from an LMS, but I think if you have the right conversations, you can encourage people to step over to the more self-directed, more trusting of the learner solution.
We also have a question from Emma. She has asked, can content be built in an external tool and be embedded in?
Thanks, Emma. Absolutely. Yes, you can. So you can build SCORM content in any authoring tool or XAPI content and upload it. If you just do the output, download the SCORM file or the XAPI file, you can upload it to the LXP and host it there. That's absolutely possible, and we do that all the time. We also have links to TED Talks and YouTube videos. We've got PDFs, etc. And what's really nice is that you can upload the resources onto Stream and then link them, show them in different learning solutions. So when you update the resource centrally, it gets updated in every learning solution.
Great. Emma also had a follow-on question from that. So in relation to where LXPs are hosted, she was particularly keen to know if there are any potential data security issues.
It depends on your organizational requirements, but there are no different hosting. It's hosted in a very similar way to any other online hosting would be in terms of a Moodle LMS, for example. It's very, very similar, and it just depends on which hosting company you're working with and what their credentials are.
We have a question from Ursula. She has asked, what kind of insights did you get during the UX research phase or designing learning experiences?
Great question. Lots of them, so many of them. So at the beginning of our pilot phase, I load of people internally and a load of people at the client, and in this particular solution that I've just talked about how I should lay things out, how I should link from one thing to the next. And I went on to Draw.io and made a flowchart of how I saw the solution, and everyone thought, yeah, this looks great, let's do it like that. And so I built it and it looked amazing, but the learners couldn't navigate it, didn't know how to get from one thing to the next. And because it was the nesting doll approach, it was very clear to get in, but then once you wanted to navigate around, it was more restrictive, which is why I then changed it to the approach that I've shown you, which is a much more open sort of tree diagram approach where you can move from one thing to the next really, really simply. So that was my main insight. Keep it simple and keep it open, and signpost.
Awesome. We've also got a question. Are LXPs expensive to create?
Now, that's a tricky one because I don't think they are. I don't think they are, especially at the moment. I'm a learning designer. I'm not a salesperson, I've got to tell you, and I'm not sure about the pricing. But from what I've seen, they are not. And I'd be delighted to take this offline and put you in touch with someone. But I don't want to give you an answer that's incorrect.
Cool. We've also got a question. What companies care about LXPs? What characteristics of maturity do they have?
That is interesting. Well, from our experience, we haven't really been able to nail down an absolute profile of characteristics. There's it tends to be people who care about their learners. The Amway solution, they are very keen on a good learning culture. It's just people who want to encourage a proactive culture of learners accessing the content they need. I think that's it. It goes a bit beyond the here is your annual compliance training once a year kind of lot, if you want.
Great. And we've probably got time for one more question. So Nirad has asked, is it easy to build our own LXP or use Stream LXP?
I think, so I can only talk about my experience of using Stream, which was incredibly easy. I've been waiting for this question to come up, and I think I was hoping I was worried you guys wouldn't believe me if I told you how easy it was. I got admin access on a Wednesday, and by the Friday, I knew how to create solutions, upload files, change files, do the graphics, chuck the graphics in, and it was so straightforward. I was really surprised. The journey, the learning journey for me is continuing in how to present the best possible experience for the learners. and do it efficiently.
Amazing. We've run out of time, but thank you so much for your session. It was incredible. It was great to see exactly how it's done. And I think like to learn in a way that's similar to Netflix is incredible. It really takes our learning solutions to the next level. So thank you so much for your time and for joining us at the Learning Conference.
Thank you so much, guys. Bye.